Hello and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Casty. If it's not, thanks for always tuning into my videos. Today we are going over a series and why you should read this series. Ashes of the Sun by Django Wexler. This series is called Burningblade and Silvereye, and here's a bunch of reasons and kind of a little bit of a review on why you should read this series because it's good and I need more people to talk to about it. So people read it. Read it. And like, how pretty are these? I literally love these covers. I think they're gorgeous. Okay, let's get right on into the video. So, at this point in time, I actually have read both of these, but I will try to keep my thoughts based mainly on the first book, but we will have I will compare a little bit and tell you a little bit of things about the second one, just like non-spoiler, just like there are some things that I think were improved upon in the second. Ashes of the Sun, in its simplest terms, is a story about a brother and sister who are forced to separate. The sister is taken by the Empire because she has magic, and then the brother, because his sister was taken, and there is a scene that happens to him by this like centaur that comes to take his sister, he then grows up and becomes part of the rebellion and wants to take the Empire down. That's simple terms. I think my number one reason for telling people to read this story is the unique world, a unique take on fantasy. I would call this a fantasy book, but it blends genres so well. There are major sci-fi elements. The author himself says that he is heavily inspired by Star Wars in this book, and you can see that comparison. I quickly forgot that it was there, but there are like major Star Wars-like things in here, specifically the magic system. And there's also, a lot of people would say, a little bit of horror because we have these like body horror, just like these creatures that are a little bit horrifying, but not spooky. Like, it's not spooky the way a horror book is, so I personally wouldn't classify it as horror, but there is just like creatures that are horrific. So it's just like a unique take. It's just done so uniquely, and I think that's like the major reason to read this book. If you're looking for something different in fantasy, Ashes of the Sun. My other reason I loved it so much is the magic system. So in this world, we had the Chosen and the ghouls that kind of fought against each other. The ghouls started making these humanoid-like constructs, very like techy, and the Chosen didn't like that. The Chosen didn't like how much power the ghouls had, so they went to wipe the ghouls out, and the ghouls made a plague that then killed off all of the Chosen. So our magic system is those who have chosen blood in them, but it's been like watered down throughout the years. They have the ability to touch Dayat. They have the ability to touch Dayat. And this is where the Star Wars inspiration comes from, because we have these things called Hackens, which is kind of, once they touch the Hacken, they get a Dayat blade, and this reminds you of a lightsaber. But it's really cool because, like, each person in the Twilight Order, or the Order for short, has, like, a different element. So our main character, Maya, has a fire blade, and she can do cool things with fire. There's one that is, like, a lightning, and then there's one that's, like, wind. Like, really cool the way it's done, and unique and fun. So that, in that sense, I feel like it's completely different than Star Wars, but the actual idea of how they use the magic is similar to a Star Wars lightsaber and the Force. So I just think the magic system in general is really cool, and if you want a unique magic system, read it, because there's just like so many different elements of it. And then in the opposite side of the world, we have the ghouls, which use something called Dekir. Humans can also use Dekir. Anyone can use Dekir, just lots of them don't know how to do it well. The ghouls have like really cool like tech, and the ghouls are no longer a thing in this world either. They also died out, but the tech has been left behind and people are finding it. So just like the magic system in general, there's two sides to it. They're super cool and unique, and I would 100% suggest reading it for this. And then we have the basic plot. The plot itself has lots of very typical fantasy pathways to it. It's a very typical fantasy path, the plot itself, but we have so much going on within the plot because we're following two different POVs. And so with Maya, you're in the Twilight Order, and there's like the idea that the Twilight Order is not all good. The Twilight Order, there is definitely like different factions in it and things that believe in different people that believe in different things, and it's just, you see Maya kind of struggle with, is the Twilight Order good? So you see a lot of politics and scheming within Maya's point of view. I personally, in book 1, preferred Maya's point of view, but when I read book 2, that swapped and I preferred Geyer's. And so in Geyer's POV, he has joined the rebellion, and you get to see the rebellion side of things, which also has a little bit of politics and controversy and all of that. But you also get to see Geyer using the ghoul magic and Maya using the chosen magic, the diet. I think that there's just a lot of interesting things always happening in this book, and the way it's told is incredible to me. We follow two characters that go on very similar arcs, very similar journeys, because they're both kind of at a same spot in their life when this book starts. And as we go, the timelines mirror, well, the POVs, the arcs they go on mirror each other. And I love to see the comparisons and the really big contrast between the two. Each story has a romance, which is normally something I don't enjoy in fantasy, but neither romance really bothered me because I thought it was really cool to see what each protagonist, what the brother and what the sister needed from a lover and what they didn't need. And I feel like they contrasted each other a lot, but then also compared each other. The way Wexler wrote this, the mirroring of the timelines and the arcs was just chef's kiss, and I would love to see something like this done even more in fantasy. They are very similar journeys, very similar arcs, but you also feel like they're completely different at the same time, and so good. And then again, a positive is that there is a sapphic relationship in this book. Actually, I believe all of Wexler's books have a sapphic relationship. I personally think it was done really well. I really enjoyed the representation and would recommend it. The other part about the mirroring thing is that the writing is very accessible, which is something I really enjoyed about it. I would say this is a good introduction to higher fantasy. So we have adult themes in this book. It gets dark. There's some gritty moments, but we do have a younger protagonist in both senses. I think that they're 3 years apart. They are quite young, and they're going through a little bit of what you would go through at those ages. So in the sense of the younger protagonist and the way they reacted to things, I do think that felt a little bit young. I would not call this book YA, but it's definitely a younger adult book. If I could put new adult on something, I think I would call it new adult. So I feel like if you're just starting to love fantasy, this would be a great starting place. But also, as someone who reads high adult fantasy, epic adult fantasy, I also really enjoyed this. But we do have a younger protagonist, and I am only 24, which I think Geyer must be around my age, but I'm 25, I am not 24. Either way, I think Geyer must be around my age, maybe a little bit younger, but Maya was 3 years younger than Geyer, so she is a little bit young. And we do have a young cast of characters in general. None of the main characters or supporting characters are really older than that age, which we can lead into characters because I loved the characters in this book. There's one character I didn't like, and I think that is why I didn't enjoy Geyer's characters as much. I felt like this character was just a little too much humor, a little bit too much of that comedic relief for me. They didn't take anything serious enough, but I loved all of the cast of characters. Specifically, I loved the cast of characters in Blood of the Chosen, which they are similar, mostly the same, but you kind of have this found family aspect in both of these timelines. So Geyer and Maya both have a small group around them. So not only did I love Maya and Geyer, and I found that they were really strong characters who had feelings and motivations, and I felt the depth within them, we also had, I want to say, about 3 to 4 characters around each of them that I cared about, I was intrigued to read about, and thought they added a lot to the story. So if you like characters, I would suggest this. Character-driven wise, I think it's incredible. Plot-driven wise, it is pretty good. My only downfall would probably be there's a crap ton of action in this book. There is plot, it moves around, we have character moments, but there is a crap ton of action. Django Wexler does not side away from action scenes. You see lots of action scenes. There was a little too much action for me, but I also enjoyed the action scenes and seeing these fight scenes and seeing how things actually happened. I did enjoy. Also, I should say that the character I did not like in the first book was maybe my favorite character in the second book. So it does just let you see the growth I think that Wexler had between book 1 and book 2. Now, at the core of this book is a sibling relationship. I do feel like the series that I've read so far is lacking a little bit on the actual siblings. You don't see a lot of the siblings together because the prologue, they're 5 and 8 and taken away, and they don't get together for a very, very long time. But I think you can just see the grasps of a sibling. You see the whispers of that sibling relationship and that sibling connection within this book. And it's just going to get better and better and better. So I still like to say this is a book about siblings because I still saw it. I still felt their anger and their love and all of that. Like, they had a lot of anger for what happened, and they have a lot of love for each other, even though they've barely seen each other. And I think I still saw a strong sibling relationship within the book, but I do wish I got a little bit more of it. But yeah, I think it's still a plus that you have this sibling bond. Some of my negatives for the book, because with every book there are negatives, I only gave this, book 1 and book 2 only got 4 stars from me. Like, they didn't reach that 5-star mark just because of these specific connotations I had for the book. One is that there are a couple common plot devices that I personally do not really enjoy. They're very personal to me. There is a healing scene that happens that I don't really enjoy, and a couple other things, but I can't tell you without spoilers. But there's just very specific plot devices that I don't think will bother a lot of people. They didn't bother me and impact my enjoyment too much, but they just made it from not get that 5-star. And then the ending in book 1 did feel just a little bit rushed to me compared to the amazing amount of build-up we got to that moment, but still didn't really impact my enjoyment. It was just something that was there. Some negatives for book 2 specifically are that it follows the same formula that book 1 does. This isn't necessarily an issue, especially if you read them farther apart, but as someone who binged them back to back, it is something I noticed. And I do think book 2 just had a little bit of middle book syndrome just because it had so much setup for the last book. But again, I loved this series. It's something so unique. The plague spawn, you get to know a lot about, and you get to know a little bit more about the Chosen and the ghouls, and like the whole magic system just like explodes a little bit in book 2. Yeah, so pretty much if you want a unique world, a cool magic system, politics, a rebellion, cool like science, because there's so many cool like ghoul devices, like ghoul tech, like I can't even tell you because I feel like there's spoilers, but like the tech in this is so cool. The like things they do with the deck gear, and I mean, I also really just loved the way the magic worked, and I don't know. I just think that this is so cool, such a great fantasy read, and very unique to anything I've read in fantasy. And maybe it's because it has that sci-fi twist, which is something I typically feel like I don't enjoy, but it's done so well in this. I feel fully immersed in the story the entire time. I was literally gripped from the first 5 pages in Ashes of the Sun. Like, the prologue got me. I was so obsessed with it. The writing style is just so accessible, but still like, Oh, and Wexler has a way with like cliffhangers at the end of a chapter. Every single chapter, I was so excited to get to the next chapter because I was like, ooh, that POV just ended here. Like, you know, I love when a writer can do that. If you have great ending lines of a chapter that just keep me pushing and keep me reading, so it's so bingeable and I never want to put it down. This series, I cannot wait for book 3. Like, why do I have to wait so long? I just enjoyed these thoroughly, and I just need more people to read them so that we can talk about them. I will 100% be picking up more from Django Wexler. The 1,000 Names, I'm coming for you. And like the prettiest covers. Come on, tell me that these aren't beautiful. Like, even the spines, like, beautiful. I feel like I've barely heard anyone talk about this series, so I just need more people to read it. Because yeah, read it. It's good, it's great. Mel gave it 5 stars. Rachel loves it. Read Django Wexler, Burningblade, and Silvereye, and then come talk to me about it. The only thing I think I didn't touch on is the actual plague spawn, which is like the horror element that you get. The plague spawn are made out of like different they came from the plague. The Chosen had the plague, and then they started to like kill people and attach the dead people to them, and so now plague spawn are just like this animal type thing, like almost like a zombie, I guess, that just like adds new human pieces to it at all the time, and they're just like driven by their one need to kill, and it's super cool. Just read this, just 100% read this. Okay, I'm done rambling. Read them. And if you'd like to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my Book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Patreon are all linked in the description bar below. Have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day because you're binging these, right?